Deleted session, August 2, 1978. Good evening. Now, Rupert's irritability is partially physical of late. The body wants to move. Irritability is indeed in its way a sign of life and vitality. It is not passive. For example, physically, Rupert is nervous. The nervous system is being activated. He wants to walk and is being driven toward motion. Even though his present capabilities as yet only allow him to go so far. The irritability that is a healthy, nervous reaction. The nerves are physically urging him on, hence of course, the walking in the kitchen, the impatience in the chair, the odd nervous sensations in the legs and hips, and behind this, your decision again not to hide, not to be apologetic. His body is already thus apologetic. On the other hand, the decision to have the interview, to take up with owner and so forth, these events catapult old beliefs to the forefront of Rupert's mind, an excellent reaction. By the way, for when those beliefs are voiced and discussed, then they can be understood and eventually dismissed. There are periods of rest necessary, so for a while Rupert did not write down his feelings. He was tired of dealing with them. Now they are coming to the forefront again, and Rupert is trying them into your early springtime pendulum sessions, so that some new benefits now can come from that old work. The decision to have the interview of itself means that Rupert was that afraid. The event of the interview showed you both, in concentrated form, how much you hid from others, and that to further decision as described in our last session not to hide Rupert's condition, and not to be apologetic about it either. Now, in answer to your question about impressions, let us briefly discuss the past. You both considered yourself fine intellectuals, and at that time advocates of science and of the mind. You, Joseph, were particularly distrustful of the emotions, particularly, of course, of any raw emotion, and you preferred, if possible, to discuss emotions intellectually while feeling them as indirectly as possible. Rupert was more emotionally demonstrative, more open to people, while frightened of them at the same time. When he danced, he often felt that he was dancing out the emotions of others. When our sessions began, I spoke to you in an intellectual rather than emotional manner. In the beginning, the two of you experimented more or less together with your side time and so forth. You did not allow yourself to be moved by people to the extent that Rupert sometimes did. He grew afraid of drinking, lest his inhibitions be dropped, and he began getting impressions about other people and telling them. Several affairs frightened you both. The woman in labor, for example, and the affair in which Rupert banged upon the table. You both felt that considerable caution had to be used. Rupert drank considerably in class, yet always with one eye watching the other. He had to show that he had psychic abilities, but that he was in control of them. He had to prove that he was a reasonable person. He felt that you would disapprove of many class events. In those classes you did not attend. Then you would think he went too far. It is very possible that you would have found the emotional aura at least vaguely unpleasant on some occasions. So Rupert always tried, because of his own feelings as well as yours, to be intuitional and intellectual at the same time. He was also afraid of making errors, because unlike other psychics, he could not simply conveniently forget them or make up a story to cover them. Since his psychic abilities did not show themselves in a conventional fashion in his early years, he did not learn to trust them as he might have otherwise. Yet this was part of the entire picture. What he is trying to do is to turn on the high intellect or spacious mind. The high intellect or spacious mind is a combination of what you think of as psychic or intuitional and the intellectual qualities, only raised to a much higher degree and united. This happens when the intellect is in your turns strained to the utmost, and it finally opens up within itself to form what is in those turns a new faculty. Robert has emphasized the intellect's critical qualities so that they serve as an impetus to lead him to this opening that he knows exists, though he only senses it so far and has experienced it but briefly. It will carry him where intuitively he knows he can go. It is for this reason that he has stubbornly resisted other areas of help in his physical condition, and it is the reason that you have gone alone. Give us a moment. This does involve you practically in periods of discontent, a discontent that is in its way a constant reminder that prevents you from being satisfied with lesser answers along the way. Robert is being led to discover that the answers to his intellectual questions about his abilities, my existence, life after death, the solution to his physical problems can only be discovered through the appreciation and the use of his intuitive and psychic abilities. He is now making that intellectual discovery. Then the mind, the intellect, alters its focus, using its abilities automatically for intuitive ends, and its questioning abilities are freed from endless queries from the outside, so to speak, and it joins with the intuitions, seeking its answers freely in that greater realm. The intellect then discovers that its own abilities were greatly limited before because of the small scope within which its questions were asked. Robert is now coming to that kind of realization and that kind of development, which is of course the only possible answer. Some intellects vary quicker than others, or quickly use up, say, a fairly limited scope, but Robert's has been restless and stubborn. I am not making judgments now, but showing reactions. So the two of you hit the sessions from the beginning. For example, you tried to fit the sessions into the scientific context, as you thought was right, with the testing and so forth. None of that spoke of any greater emotional exhibitionism, yet both of you feared it. Robert has pared down his abilities. He has pared down them to those he could reasonably explain intellectually. This means, of course, that his intellect is far more flexible than most. Yet, the intellect, as you understand it, has been conditioned to accept only a small portion of your intuitional reality. You conquered in a good bit of this, often through unspoken attitudes and through invisible example, but you got your backs up against the world, with chips upon your shoulders. This is rather an important session, and your dream context represents your desires to pay more attention again to inner realities. Robert felt he had to explain to the world, and he began to cut off experiences that he did not intellectually find decisive answers for. This does apply to the predictions and to his attitudes toward the mail, which are highly ambiguous. Give us a moment. In a way, both of you wanted your words to meet. You have cut down on your own psychic experience until you finish unknown, because you did not want to take the time to record dreams, and you did not want psychic events, either of you, to spill over into your daily lives and intrude upon your work. Again, a note. When Robert talked about his work, this is often a ruse, an excuse to hold back from free, playful, intuitive, or psychic experiences. You both like to use the word work to show others that you are not irresponsible and that you work twice as hard as they do. This also means, however, that you inhibit natural, playful creativity and sometimes what I will call high art, because you are so upset with your images. For a while, you altered your schedules. This shook you up a bit psychically and freed some energy, and Robert did very well typing 7. You broke up some habitual negative patterns and gave yourself some different viewpoints. These viewpoints were barely noticed, and yet they also result in a loosening of some mental patterns, simply because you did not automatically do certain things because it was a certain time of day. Sleeping 5 hours or so for Robert in any case right now is good, because his body wants to move by then, and soreness and irritability begin toward morning as a rule for that reason and at this stage. There are various reasons for the problems after a nap, but usually various feelings that he has not resolved during the day, often of guilt, come to the surface when he awakens. He feels guilty for one thing, that you prepare supper, but if he has not worked as much as he thinks he should have by then, that guilt is added. He feels it is the end of the normal working day for others, and therefore he should have put in so much time. Creative work must transcend time, and when he is writing well, time is forgotten. His poem last night took a good full 20 minutes. He cannot be compared in any way with the amount of work done by someone in a normal 8-hour day. Someone could work at a poem for 8 hours and have nothing. He wrote the poem because he felt like it. Scandalous behavior, and also because he had expressed his feelings and written them down. Read this section carefully and pay attention to it. Try to be somewhat daring in your ways together, and that's cautious and inhibited. The section should give both of you important hints to release your own creativity, and when Robert is feeling blue about something, if he does not discuss it with you, he should write the feelings down at once. End of section. Rob noted I asked a question. As this, Jane nodded. What do you think of that reading Jane received in the mail today? I referred to a reading by the medium. Edward Babbitt, given for someone who had written Jane several months ago. They said, give us a moment. It is convention, in that the medium's insights are automatically translated into stylized versions that will be understood by those for whom he reads. Both he and his customers follow the same psychic map. The readings give a certain comfort. They cannot be proven or disproven. The medium, for example, has not opened up into the higher intellect, for he will not question enough to truly discover the point where the intellect can go no further. He is not besieged by doubts either, and often his insights are good and helpful. On the other hand, many of his customers, of course, must look further, and despite themselves realize that this bit of truth is a pretty postcard, in Jane's words, and they yearn for some kind of a deeper originality and authenticity, a spark of something that will be instantly recognized. Robert can give them that, and that must be necessity appear out of context. It will not fit in with current theories, for the current theories by their nature must distort the truth they carry. In those terms, of course, some distortion is necessary. Yet there is a hint of the internal, a snatch of timelessness that can appear momentarily, and that is definite, if indefinable, as in my voice in this moment. And now I bid you a fond good evening. Ralph said, "Thank you," said, "Good night."